At this point, Madam Clerk, we are shifting to public comment.
Alan, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Alan, go ahead.
All right. So on November 10th, an activist group called Central Illinois News, a member organization of No Ameren Shutoffs, released a video explaining the dire circumstances and the struggle of our campaign. We are now 49 member organizations strong and counting. On November 11th, a member of one of the No Ameren Shutoffs organizations asked Mayor Tari Renner to stop utility shutoffs, which he responded to as yes. On November 12th, Councilman Jeff Crable submitted an initiative for the Bloomington City Council to begin to address utility shutoffs. On November 16th, you all on the Bloomington City Council voted unanimously to approve the initiative in recognition of utility shutoffs as a pandemic safety issue. Although we've passed resolutions in multiple counties throughout political party bodies, you were the first municipal government to provide an official gesture outside of Champaign County. That makes a difference. Despite all your internal divides, you came together and stood up for your residents. The next day, on November 17th, research from No Ameren Shutoffs was published and the media began to ask Governor Pritzker about his financial ties to power utilities in the state, including Ameren, Illinois. Wednesday, November 18th, Ameren, Illinois, Commonwealth Edison, and Peoples Gas all ceased disconnections. Ameren even claims that this was because the temperature was in the 30s, yet the 24-hour forecast, which is the only forecast relevant for the state statute, throughout the state was in the 40s. And Thursday, November 19th, was in the 60s. This was us, all of us, across a wide political spectrum, working in what ways we understood how to keep each other safe during the pandemic. The underbelly of Illinois politics is not so difficult to overpower as some progressives in their sphere have suggested. All it takes is for people who care to act. And for that, I say thank you. Unfortunately, for the state of Illinois, water shutoffs continue by the corporation known as Illinois American Water. Tomorrow, they will meet with State Representative Carol Ammons and a small cluster of other local officials. I hope to bring this chapter to a close. The last thing that Bloomington City Council can do is to advocate for the McLean County Board or the Public Health District to use their Emergency Services and Disaster Agency Act power to restore public utility service as enumerated in the Illinois Emergency Services and Disaster Act. If they do not, the only other thing that you can do as a body is to adopt the Emergency Services and Disaster Act, which Springfield has, which Jacksonville has, which Peoria has, which Champaign has, and which Urbana has. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.
Next up, we have Tessa Summers. Tessa, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Leslie.
Tessa, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Renner and members of the council. I'm here tonight to address you briefly in support of the proposed Welcoming Cities ordinance. So I'm originally from Bloomington Normal, but I moved away and back several times over the course of my life so far, and I just recently moved back here, what I think is for good, from Texas. And so although this ordinance has been under consideration for quite some time, I think there's no time like the present to be clear about my support for it. So I read the ordinance with my lawyer hat, and I don't see a credible argument against it. I also read it with my non-lawyer personal hat, and I found it equally convincing. So, of course, most of us are immigrants if we trace our lineage back far enough, but also this ordinance means something personal to me for two additional reasons. I married into a family that is more recently emigrated than my own, and is identifiable by skin color. So to be frank, my in-laws have dealt with a lot of fear and threats over the last several years. And I also spent several days in 2018 offering pro bono legal services to asylum seekers in Texas. And so while we aren't necessarily talking about asylees, I think the experience is apropos here. So I want to share a little bit of that with you all. I was at the Hutto Detention Center for Women, just outside Austin, Texas. And these women were to a person completely traumatized by the experiences in their home countries, the things that they were running from. And I heard stories of absolutely gut-wrenching loss and abuse, and it's hard to reflect on that, let alone try to describe that, that level of horror that they experienced in their lives. And these are, of course, our brothers and sisters, and they're also our neighbors here in Bloomington Normal. And I think now is the time that we must be unequivocal in our support for our local immigrant community, especially in this season of gratitude and giving, and a season that celebrates the birth of an immigrant infant. And I think now is the time to demonstrate our character as a community by passing the Welcoming Cities Ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, Madam Clerk.
Next up, we have Katherine Hoy.
Okay, my name is Katie Hoy. I'm a lifelong resident of Bloomington, and I have some comments in response to Councilmember Boland's Welcoming America pitch. Donna uses the term fear-mongering, but this term implies manipulation by exaggerating a circumstance. Donna's accusation that advocates of the Welcoming Cities Ordinance have been using fear-mongering techniques is evidence that she enjoys a privilege that the immigrants in our community do not. For those community members, it is a reality, not an exaggeration, that their livelihood is threatened by local law enforcement maintaining a relationship with ICE. I don't understand how Donna expects the cooperation of immigrants in our community without an ordinance protecting them from potential for harm. It is insulting to our immigrant neighbors for Donna to imply we do not need this protection. She clearly has not collected her data and research for her proposal from the people this issue affects most closely. A quick Google search provided me an article from the Vedette from February of 2019, which references research done by Illinois People's Action before they helped bring the first proposal that the council adopt a Welcoming Cities Ordinance. Executive Director of IPA, Don Carlson, is quoted as saying, "As much as the Bloomington police said it wasn't an issue, it was an issue." Through emails obtained by the Freedom of Information Act, IPA found several conversations between the Bloomington Police Department and ICE dating back to 2015, to include particular instances where BPD sent ICE information on citizens that had not committed a crime. I doubt the community members involved in these events would support Donna's admittance of a protective ordinance. I also have questions for Councilmember Bray about her opinion of the Welcoming America initiative. I want to know how an immigrant who is new to our community can benefit from anything a Welcoming America platform has to offer if they are in fear of the violence perpetrated by ICE. The Welcoming America proposal sounds nice, and that's all. It is a facade for real sanctuary, and it is a poor replacement for what your community members are asking for. I would like to cite that request by your community members as quoted in that Vedette article again, where the public information officer, John Furman, is quoted as saying, "The issue drew local attention and Bloomington residents came in large numbers to city council meetings to support the ordinance." Councilmember Bray, I'm curious why you can acknowledge that ICE has committed egregious activities, but you do not support cutting ties with them. It is suspicious to me that you would talk about them being bad guys, but not use your power to stop them from hurting your community members. I suspect ulterior motives. What are they? It is insulting to immigrants in our community and to me that you claim your body does not have authority to pass this ordinance when you clearly do. Why are you on the Bloomington City Council if you're going to say, let the feds handle it about an issue you absolutely have leverage over? And finally, I reference again the Vedette quote in reference to Councilmember Matthew saying he has not heard from our community.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Sorry, Catherine. Next, Madam Clerk.
Thanks. Next up is Trayvon Gaffney. Trayvon, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name is Trayvon Gaffney. I am here also to speak in support of a Welcoming City Ordinance and talk about the Welcoming America Ordinance, or Welcoming America Initiative. Ms. Alvarez last week told you how people throughout the state have already come together to determine the best way to help immigrants in communities where they feel like they are not being properly supported. People from this community were in attendance at those meetings. Prior council was not in attendance. If this council wishes to uphold this notion that our community cares about the immigrants in its community, then we need to listen to them when they speak. It would be more offensive to act like we want to help immigrant communities than to do nothing for them. So if we plan to put words and niceties into action, then we have to do something more than passing a Welcoming America initiative. We have to stop ICE from being able to communicate with Bloomington Police Department officers. I've stated once before, I will say it again, it is an egregious waste of municipal funds to spend any of them on a well-funded organization. ICE is a well-funded organization. It makes no sense that we would in any way need to help them more than the last administration and many special interest groups are already helping them. There's nothing in our city that represents this idea that we should keep ourselves safe and not consider those that have come into this community seeking refuge, seeking assistance, seeking asylum, whatever their situation is. I very much implore every member of this council to think about the privilege upon which they get to sit on this council, make decisions, and go through their daily lives safely. Some people in our community are saying that they do not share those same privileges. It is your duty to hear those cries and to try to do something for those people. I thank you for my time, and I wish you all a happy holiday.
Thank you very much. Next, Madam Clerk.
Next up, we have Ashley Farmer.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Ashley, go ahead.
Hi, so I would also like to speak in support of the Welcoming Cities ordinance that has been discussed. I've of course heard a lot of people's opinions on this particular issue, but I want to talk first about evidence. Specifically, there have been many peer-reviewed studies looking at the effects of having a Welcoming Cities ordinance in cities across the United States, just like this one, especially in regards to crime and the economy. One of the factors to be considered in having a Welcoming Cities ordinance is that it helps promote cooperation with our local law enforcement agencies among the people who live here. And residents, especially immigrants, are then going to be more likely to report crimes to the police, to come forward as witnesses with the police, to even report their own victimization to the police. And this in turn fosters more trust between the community and our local police agencies, and more broadly makes us safer as a community. I do research on police and police community relationships myself, so I think this is incredibly important. Studies on crime rates in cities with these ordinances have found either a null effect, so crime rates really have not changed at all, or an effect where some crime rates actually decreased, specifically for property crimes. Evidence also shows that diversity helps the economy. The counties across the United States that have the strongest economic outputs are also the most diverse. And all of these things point to broader positive effects of having a Welcoming Cities ordinance in Bloomington. Speaking to immigration issues more broadly, aggressive immigration enforcement with ICE has had dire consequences for families, for local economies, and for communities more broadly who have had to see members of their community dragged away, locked up, and or deported, some who have lived there for decades. And we have also learned that there's little to be gained by enacting harsh and exclusionary policies aimed at immigrants and immigration. I know people also have a lot of opinions about the necessity of such an ordinance here, but having a Welcoming Cities ordinance in place does more than just provide a solution when it comes to cooperation with ICE on undocumented immigration. It shows that we value this entire community and every single person who lives here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.